All right. Good evening, everyone. How's it going? Hope you're all right. Can you just confirm if you can hear me clearly and see me properly? It has taken enough lighting, I can assure you. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. So let's begin, I guess. Sorry for a bit of delay. As you know, last minute tech things always come up. So uh, this is our second class for this session, of course. Each one we alternate between paper one and paper two. This one is a paper two session. And first, we'll talk a little bit about what the paper is. The camera quality is half the reason. If you know what I mean. But anyways, so thank you, Mr. Camera, for being so bright. And so I was saying that we're going to go through paper two today. I'm going to give you a bit of background about what to expect, what to see, how to plan your paper. And I've picked one of the two case studies, and of that, I don't think I'll be able to do the entire paper. So we'll not be able to get as far as the 12 marker, but don't worry about that because we will alternate each week. If I'm doing an 8 marker today from a case study, the next P2 class, I'm going to do a 12 marker from a case study. So you'll get enough of each type of question, I can assure you. So let me just take you to the screen that I want you to see. And yeah, there we go. So remember, this is hopefully we are a little bit better from this situation, but the idea is to get you from there to here as soon as possible. And this is today, of course, a paper two session. The paper I picked for today, and as I told you in our last session, that I will be working our way backwards. So November 1st of 2024, then June, then we'll do February, and then we'll go to 2023. So today's paper is November 2024, paper 2-1. I've picked the second case study from this paper. That case study is called Coffee Company Loco. So CCL is what we are looking at. And we'll go through the case study, but let me just show you that we'll be attempting three of the four questions, the ones that you see highlighted in blue. So part A, B, and C are, I believe, what we'll be able to go through in today's class. If time allows it, I'll give you at least a brief breakdown of how to attempt the 12 marker in this paper. Okay, so let's get on with it. And so imagine right now that you're sitting in your exam, paper two has been handed to you. What you need to know is that you'll have 1 hour and 30 minutes to do two identical case studies. So identical in the sense that they will both have one business each. They will have 4 parts to answer. They will also have, both will have calculation questions. There'll be definitions. And, each case study will have some numbers, a table, maybe a graph sometimes, and a lot of words for you to work with. So the idea is to dedicate 45 minutes per case study. That way you're able to finish 2 in 90 minutes. And for each mark, you will roughly have a minute and a half. So it's in a 1.5 times. So if you're doing a 1 marker, you should be able to do it in 2 minutes. If you're doing a 3 marker, you should be able to do 4 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to give you clues about how to manage your time when you're answering these questions, especially when you're attempting a full paper at home. It's a good idea to keep in mind the time that you will have in your exams. Of course, at home, you may be a little bit more relaxed. So you may take 5 or 10 minutes more than 45 minutes, but start with 1 hour practices, then bring it down to 55 minutes, then 50, then 45. That's how you make sure that you won't be running out of time in your exams. So when you open your paper and you know that, let's say this is the first case study that you see, there are a few things that we must remind ourselves of. And something that remains a constant throughout your A levels, whether that's paper 1, 2, 3, or 4, is the use of 4 writing skills that I always speak of, right? So you know that knowledge, application, analysis, and evaluation are exactly what the examiners are looking for. And as long as you're providing those elements in your answers in the right sequence, in the right place, you're forcing the examiner to consider giving you full marks. Obviously, the full marks also depend on the correctness of your answer, the way you structure it, how well you explain it, and how well you know the concepts. So that's another portion of it. But at bare minimum, if you're able to match the knowledge, application, with evaluation requirements for every question, you're giving yourself a good chance of scoring well. Okay, so what I've done before we even get into the case studies, I've broken it down. I've sort of made a table here which tells you what to expect from each question, or what the examiner is expecting from each question from you. So, for example, if you look at a 1 mark question, it will always start with a command word of identify. You will need to discuss just 1 point within it, and it's a simple knowledge question. 3 marker, which will be part A2, that will start with the word explain, which means you have to take some care, go into a little bit of detail. You still need to just talk about 1 point, but you need to have, 3 elements to it. One, fact about the concept, which takes care of the knowledge, and then this how that knowledge is applied to a business. That's what the applications. You do the same for part B's 3 marker, exactly the same. Then we'll be looking at 8 marker, which will always start with the word analyze. And that means that you'll be rewarded 1 mark for knowledge, 2 marks for knowledge, 2 for application, and 4 for analysis across 2 points. So that's the equation that we make, that if you want to write 2 points, which you'll be required to do, each point or each paragraph should have some knowledge, some application, and a little bit of analysis to go along with it. I want to ask one thing. I would recommend you to not attempt your past paper in reverse order. Do not start with the 12 marker. See, the way the paper is designed is that when you read the case study, you see a bit of information first, and you need that to answer the first question, and that unlocks a little bit of understanding. Then you go to the calculation that unlocks a little bit more of the understanding. Then the 8 marker, you make better sense of the case study. By the time you get to the 12 marker, you've gone through the case study enough time to do justice to a 12 marker. So starting off with a 12 marker, you won't have spent enough time on the case study to go in enough detail. And think about it like this, that your first 2 questions, part A and part B, alone give you 10 marks, and those 10 marks you can pick up fully. It should be 10 out of 10. So why risk your time in a 12 marker where you may lose more marks, and rather focus on the first 10 marks, which are easier to obtain. So that's why I recommend go in the sequence. And as the sequence goes on, you see that the difficulty level and the requirements of the answers also increase, right? And that's what you want. You want to slowly build up to the big answer, which is your 12 marker. Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll also share some calculations for you. Right. So these are the questions that we'll be doing today. I want to get into the case study, and there's something that I always talk about, is that there are 4 pieces of information that whenever you see in a case study, you highlight it, make a note of, because it helps you to get a better understanding of what the business is all about. And I will again repeat those here. I'll write them down. The first thing you need to identify is what kind of a business it is in terms of its structure. So whether it's a private limited, public limited, etc., etc. Let me just fix my chair a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So whether it's a public, private limited, so first thing you need to look at is the kind of business structure it has. What you also need to pick up on is what kind of product are they selling. What you also need to look at is whether they're operating in B2C or B2B distribution channels. And finally, any objective, or if any mission of the business is given. You highlight it, make a note of it. Always helps me to write better answers. Maybe it'll help you too. So those are the things that we'll be definitely looking at. And with that, let's get into the case study. Okay. So once again, this is November 2024 paper 2-1, in case you are looking at it at home. So CCL is a family business in Countrywide. So straight off the bat, we have this information, that the kind of business it is that it is a family business in Countrywide. It manufactures and sells coffee powder, which is used to make coffee drinks. So they are specifically focused on the manufacturing and selling of coffee powder. So they're in the secondary sector, and their product is coffee powder. So 2 things we already know about the business. To make coffee powder, CCL transforms coffee beans purchased from primary sector businesses into a fine powder. And then they go on to explain the whole process of doing that. To make the powder, CCL roasts the beans, then grinds them into large pieces, Hot water is added to these large pieces, which transform them into a liquid. When this liquid is cool, it is frozen and broken into tiny pieces that form the coffee powder. The coffee powder is then put in jars. So this is the entire production process that they've explained, that this is what it takes to deliver a jar of CCL's coffee powder. Okay, so we don't know yet about the objective or the B2C, B2B, but we know that the process of making coffee powder is what they explain here. And then CCL uses product differentiation. Now, remember, product differentiation means that you need to be able to position and brand and package your products in such a way that once people see your product, they directly identify, oh, that's the CCL coffee, and I must have that over some other coffee bean. So that recognition comes from having USP, that recognition comes from having a brand identity. And if you can establish that, and what you get, okay, is my voice better now? I think I may have strayed too far from the mic. I'm as close as I can get. So hopefully it's better now. Yeah. So as I was saying, so product differentiation is obviously trying to make sure that you stand out amongst your competitors. What that gives you the competitive advantage. You can develop a certain brand image, and that's what allows you to charge a higher price. And then the whole discussion of profit comes after that. So that's product differentiation. And what CCL does is CCL uses product differentiation when selling the jars of coffee as shown in table 2.1. So even within their own product portfolio, they have these four brands. So these are all the coffees that they're selling. The first one is CCL's own brand. So that's product A. Let's take this step by step. So product A, which is CCL's own brand, it's a cash cow. And next year in 2024, it's expected to be 29% of your total revenue. So that's about 1/3 of your revenues coming from a product that's a cash cow. And that would make sense, right? If you remember, we discussed product portfolio analysis. Within that, we discussed Boston Matrix and how you identify a cash cow. And this is how you should process it. The moment you see a cash cow written in your case study, just straight away remind yourself of how do you know a product is the cash cow. And we know that Boston Matrix uses two factors: market share and market growth. So here's my question to you. If a product is a cash cow, then in terms of its market share and market growth, what is it? Is it high or is it low? Can you tell me what it is? It's, let's say, market share and market growth. Any idea? So market share is very high, absolutely, but the market growth rate is kind of slow now. So that's how you identify a cash cow. And the moment you explain this in your answers, you start getting the knowledge marks. That look, I know how to identify, and here's me showing you how to do it. So you, wherever you see cash cow, make sure you explain how you got to it. Okay. The next one is product B, a national supermarket own label product. It's a question mark, but it's expected to be 30% of your forecast revenue. Now, how do we know a product is a question mark? Any idea? So I'm just going to write it here. Question mark is equal to market share and market growth. Uh, Market share, question mark. Has it made its name yet? Do you think it has a market share, or it's a low market growth, that no market share? That's why it's question mark. You should know this. Okay, low market share. That's good. So low market share, but high market growth. Can I call it that? Yeah. So it is showing potential. So the way to understand this is these products are products that have potential, but you still don't know whether they'll make it all the way to becoming a star or a cash cow. So it's still early days, and that's what I mean here by question mark. So that's this second product. Third product is similar in the sense that it is also question mark. It is a quality product sold in a niche market. So look how they're attempting to penetrate different markets. They're in a niche market, they're in a supermarket mass market, their own products also mass market. So they're trying to make sure that they have different products in every area. And this one's expected to be 15% of your future revenue. And then the last one, product D, which is a non-branded product sold to wholesalers. It's a cash cow. That means, again, high market share, low market growth, and it is expected to be 26% of your future revenue. So we know that they have a diversified portfolio. We know that they're expecting good things, particularly from these two, as we can clearly see, 29% and 30%. And we have a question later on Boston Matrix where we will use this information. Okay. By the way, this also tells us whether they're B2B or B2C, which is that they're both. Remember, they're selling to supermarkets, wholesalers, that's B2B, their own brand, and they sell to niche market, that means that's B2C. So maybe I'll write it down. So this is B2C, this is B2B, this is B2C, and this is B2B. So this is a business that is making sure that they are present everywhere. Slow market growth means that not a lot of new people are buying this product. Okay, growth means are more people from the general public buying your product. It means that it used to be a popular product, but now it's not as pop. As in, not new people are buying, but the old people still want to use it. For example, iPhone users move on to iPhones, but you don't see that too many people now move to the iPhone. A, it's expensive. B, there's a brand fight between the Google and Apple. So anytime it has made its mark but it's not growing any further, that's when it becomes the cash cow. Slow market growth means, no, low market growth means high competition. Low market growth means that you're not able to sell more products. So it could be because of competition, it could be because you're not innovating, it could be many factors. Yeah, I'll be sharing all the recordings as well. I promise I have that on my mind for today. Uh, right. So I hope you're okay with the Boston Matrix. I'll move on. So it's only a little bit. By the way, since the syllabus changed in 2023, the amount of information that you're given in the case study has actually been reduced. If you notice anything before 2023 and after 23, there's less information, so there's less to read, which is a good thing for you guys. Okay. All right, moving on. So in 2023, CCL's total revenue was 10 million. So anytime you see big numbers highlighted, make a note of it. It's always useful to use them in your answers. So total revenue is 10 million. Total revenue is forecast to increase by 10% in 2024. So whenever they say anything like this, it's forecast to increase, there's bound to be a question on it. And that's the calculation question we'll see later on. Okay. The owners are concerned about CCL's long-term future, given the position of each product within the Boston Matrix. So whenever they say a statement like that, look, they are worried and they're not sure what to do. Again, that's usually where a question will be placed on this point. And when you see a question of Boston Matrix, that's what they will ask you. Can you help the business make decisions about products based on the Boston Matrix? So we're going to use all of this. We're going to have to come up with a future strategy for each product using the Boston Matrix. And then the market for coffee products in country Y is forecast to grow by 25% over the next 5 years. So I suppose that's a good omen that generally more and more people will be buying coffee. So if I was the owner of CCL, I'd be quite happy about it that, I'm already present in B2B, I'm also in B2C, and I've given myself an equal chance of success because I'm in the niche market where I can, yes, there's high cost of production, but there's higher pricing as well. So there's a reward there. I also have my own brand, which is good. That means I'll be known for the chocolates I'm making. But for example, a national supermarket's own label product, this is where CCL's name is not on the product, but it does still mean that the chocolate that they're providing is CCL's, which means they're still making money off of it. So they're all over. And CCL would like to increase the added value of its coffee products to benefit from the forecast market growth. So value addition is a very, very common question to be asked, especially in paper two. And this is a 12 marker. I don't think we'll be able to get to it, but in any case, value added is whenever there's a question on value added or added value, there's only two ways that a company can increase added value. Okay. And that is that either by reducing their cost of production or by bringing in new features which allows them to charge a higher price. So only two ways, either charging a higher price because you have a new feature or finding a more efficient process which brings your cost of production down, and that increases the amount of value that you've added in the product. So whenever you have to whenever you have to answer a question on added value, just only think about these two things: that what can I recommend which will allow the business reduce the cost of production, or what can I recommend which will help the business to charge a higher price. Those are the two things you discuss in added value. Right, so that's the case study. Any questions about what you see, what you've seen about the case study so far? Anything at all? Okay, so let's move on and get to the answers. Uh, So these are the questions that I'll be looking to attempt. First, you will always see that part A will be divided into two subparts, A1 and A2. It will be first a question which starts with the word identify, and this does not need more than few words. So one word, 4, 5 words, just a quick statement. It does not need to be a definition. Often I've seen students make the mistake of defining the thing but not identifying the words that I was looking for. So be very careful with this question. Do not define the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, exactly right. So that's one benefit that you get from family business, right? So anything else, guys? What do you think? Well, give me some strengths of family businesses. One is that you can pass down knowledge, or you can pass down company secrets to future generations. So that's a strength. Anything else that comes to mind? Loyalty, yeah, commitment, focus from the family. Company secrets remain secrets. Expertise are shared, absolutely. And yeah, again, continuity, very good. That's also one of them. Excellent. So why don't we get to it? Let's start knocking the out. And by the way, um, technically, you don't need to know the case study to attempt part A, but I still recommend that you read the case study and then start attempting part A, because in A part 2, where they ask you to explain, you can bring in a reference from the case study as application. And that's, I'll show you how to do that today. But first, we'll attempt this one. This one does not need any real thought. We're looking at the case study, supportive work environment. You can trust people. Yeah, so there's continuity. You can pass it on to your successor and things like that. So here is your one marker. Identify one strength of of family businesses. And sorry, just give me 1 second. Yeah, there we go. So any one of these. So I could write, if I simply wrote continuity, that would be good enough. Or if I could write that passing down of knowledge, that's also fine. So any one, okay, not both, either this or this. It's good enough. Okay. Um, right. I'll move on now. Okay, now A part 2 was this. Explain the term niche market. And in this question, what you need to be careful of is that you need to show 1 point or one element for a mark for knowledge, and 2 marks are provided for application. Now you could write this in one large statement. You can break it up into two different statements. It's entirely up to you. And the first thing that you need to talk about is, and again, this is not a defined question, but you first lay out what the niche market is all about. So in terms of its knowledge, um, what I could write is that, again, I'm going to write it in shorter sentences, that this is the smaller segment of a larger population, right? And then you can talk about any two things that can fit into its application. So what I could say that, for example, this is a segment where you see less competition, And it also allows you to charge higher prices, which means that there are high margins. So anything like that, or you could simply mention that another way to do this would be, so I'm just gonna sort of break it up and give you another option of doing application here of using the case study. So I could write that in the case product C is sold in niche market. And again, let me just show you where it was. Here we saw that this is a quality product sold in a niche market. And since it's a niche market product, and they also mentioned that this is a quality product, this is where you charge higher prices. So you could have gone either way. Our customers are willing to pay, specialized goods are provided, customized goods are provided. So any one of these two would be the right way to show application in this answer. Okay. Right. I'll move on. Okay. So let's check these off as we go knock them down one by one. It takes care of A. Then we go to part B, and part B1 will always be a calculation question. And please don't be afraid of the calculation questions. They're not like super complex math. All you need to know is the concept and just remember the formula. And you remember formula by just doing enough practice. More practice means that you won't even need a formula sheet, I can assure you. So do not take these lightly. These are, in my mind, these are free marks. This is a very, very basic math. It's just a little bit of effort of going through enough questions. That's all you need to do. So this one's asking us to refer to table 2.1 and other information. So this is important. Whenever they say other information, that means with other than the table that they provided, you will need to go through the paragraphs and you will need some information, some numbers from the paragraphs or the words that are provided. And that's the indicator that other information will be given. Calculate the forecast total revenue. So this is what we have to do. We have to calculate the forecast total revenue of product C in 2024. So product C only, and the year is 2024. And they've asked us to look at table 2.1 and other information. So here it is. Why don't you give this a try? Why don't I take a pause for a couple of minutes and you try to figure it out? And this is all the information that you need. Everything that you see in the screen. And let's see if you can get the right answer. Here's a good luck cat for you. Can you see it? Okay. Hmm. Okay, Urwa says 1.65 million, right? Yeah, 1.65 million. That's one answer. Okay. Does anybody want to raise that? Let's see if we get another confirmation, then I'll attempt it. The question is that you are asked to calculate product C's forecast revenue if all of this information is given in 2024. So total revenue is 10 million. Product C is 15% of the 2024 revenue, which will increase by 10%. So what's product C's expected revenue in 2024? That's the question. Okay, we have two 1.65 million. So, okay, let's give it another minute. Let's see if we're still trying to figure it out. Okay. More and more people are agreeing. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let me also attempt this. Now, again, I've just brought this part here so I could attempt it. And I'm going to explain it to you how this is done. So in 2023, the revenue was $10 million. And what they're telling us is that in 2024, this will increase by 10%. So what you simply do is obviously get 10% of 10 million and then you add it to the 10 million. So this becomes 10 million multiplied by 10% will give you 1 million. And therefore 10 million plus 1 million means that in 2024 they'll be selling 11 million worth of total revenue or coffee, right? And then they told us that product C, where do I go? Yeah, product C was 15% of the 2024 number. So I simply take this number and I go product C is equal to 15% of 11 million. And this should come to, right, 1.65 million dollars. Okay. No, nothing is pre-released. What you see on the day of the exam is what you get to see. Okay, so this is worth 3 marks, and as you can see, it's just simple percentages. We've done with so this is a simple percentage, right? So they told you to get 10%. If you get 10% of 10 million, you will know how much more you'll be making. Okay, let me explain again. They told us that in 2023, company sold $10 million worth of product. And then they also told us that in 2024, this number will increase by 10%. So what I need to first find out is what's 10% of 10 million. So I did that. 10%, just put it in your calculators and you'll see that 10% of 10 million is 1 million. So if 1 million is additional in 2024, I add 1 million to the 10 million, which tells me that in the year 2024, you'll be selling 11 million worth of coffee products. And then the question was asking, okay, if they sell 2024, they sell 11 million 2024, and if product C is 15%, then how much will product C will make for the company? And if my total sales are 11 million, then I simply take 15% of 11 million, that is 1.65 million. So product C next year is expected to bring 1.65 million to CCL. That was the question. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Right. So, and again, I'll emphasize all it needed was just your basic math information. Trust me, it's with enough practice, you'll see that this is a piece of cake. Right, let's move on. So we can knock another off of our list, which is B part 1. And now I get to B part 2. And this will again fast there's no formula. They're simply telling you steps. You know how to calculate percentages, right? So in both situations, we are calculating percentages. There's no formula for total revenue. This is simply whatever percentage they've told you to multiply it with, you're simply doing that. First, they told us increase this by 10%, so 10 multiplied by 10%, and then 15 multiplied by 11 million. So there's no fixed formula. It's just simply following the instructions they've given you in the case. Okay, now, so B part 2, as I said, will be an explain question. You still have to talk about only one point. And here, they're very, very specifically asking you for the benefit of using budgets to CCL. So explain one benefit to CCL of using a budget. Now, remember, I guess, I think I did discuss in the last class as well that CIE always tends to test the newer topics which have been brought into the syllabus more in the recent papers. And even in our last class, we saw that there's a question on management, which we did. Recently, all the papers that I've seen, there's at least two new topics in the questions. So here you're seeing first we saw this budgets, and after this we'll be seeing Boston Matrix. So expect and make sure you go through all the new chapters. And again, I'll tell you what are the new topics. There's a whole list, but in terms of the full chapters, there are three new full chapters: budgets, which is the last chapter in finance; capacity utilization, which is the last chapter in operations; and management, which is the last chapter in HR. Other than that, the new topics within the syllabus are in chapter 3, the external growth, where we discuss mergers, takeovers, and integration. Then in marketing, we have Boston Matrix, which is new. Then we also see in operations sustainability. I'll share this. I think I've shared this in Google Classroom, but I'll share this list again, that all the new topics that have been brought in must be watertight. And you're bound to get questions on those. So I'll share the list again. Okay. Yeah. Budget, capacity utilization, management, external growth, Boston Matrix, sustainability. Yeah. Those are all the ones that I can think of. Let me think really hard. Uh, uh, hmm. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Again, I'll share the list just to be sure. So here's a question: budgets, right? So what budgets are is that, and a couple of you have rightly pointed out that it's sort of like a financial limitation given to each department, each function. That look, you have this much money to spend because company does not have an endless well of money, so we can't just dip into it and take cash out. So work within certain constraints. That's what budgets are. And remember, there are many types of budgets. There's zero budgeting, there's incremental, etc., etc. But the question is asking not to explain what budgets are. It's very important to understand that everything in this case study, in this paper, is about explaining it from the business's perspective, helping CCL do better, and answering just general thing that this is the benefit of budgets will not give you the full marks. What you need to do is how will, and they mention it clearly, like how will CCL benefit from having a budget. And what we've seen and what we know is that budgets are given to marketing, they're given to operations, finance, and all of the department. And whatever information we have, right? We're sure we have information on marketing in the terms of there's a Boston matrix here. We clearly see that there's a cash cow here, there's a question mark here. So we know that as a business, if the marketing department knew how much budget they had, or if CCL knew what the requirements of the marketing department are, they'll be able to allocate the right amount of budget to the right products so that there's no overspending, so that you can see where the money was spent correctly. You can identify the best return on your spending, or ROI, which is your return of investment. So budgets are about making sure that you don't overspend and making sure that you are able to still do all the things that you want to do without having to dip into the extra cash that company needs. Remember, more cash you spend means less working capital, and that's another problem you don't want to have. So that's basically what I'm trying to talk about here, that connect it to some part of the case study and explain it from CCS perspective. Too often I've seen in paper twos, when students start writing the answer, they're so hell-bent on explaining the concept that they totally overlook the fact that the question is about helping the business use that concept, not are explaining the concept to the examiner, because all the explaining is done in paper one. There you're asked to write whatever you want, however much you want to write, but explain the concept. But here is whether you're able to use the concepts and are actually able to help a business or not, right? And I'll repeat again that the best advice that I can give you for paper two, how to approach it, is that always approach it from the point of view of a consultant, right? You've done your AS level, you know what it takes to start a business, run a business. So the business CCL has come to you and ask you for your advice. And you're not going to just start explaining your theory to them. They'll say, probably something like, dude, I'm here for my solutions, not how, I don't want to know how much you know about a concept. So it's always application, it's always advisory, it's always a suggestion that you're making to the business rather than just simply explaining the concept. So there's a big difference in how you approach paper one and how you approach paper two. And this is the critical difference. Okay, I hope you will remember this. So now the way I would structure this, and once again, where here it is. Sorry if that made you dizzy. So here's that question. B part two, explain one benefit to CCL of using budget. And this is again divided into 1 mark for knowledge, and you'll be given 2 marks for application. Okay. Um, Baran, I'll come to time management towards the end. That's a whole different discussion. Okay. Just remind me in case I forget towards the end. So start off with your knowledge and straight away mention what budgets are good for. And one thing that I can do, and rightly somebody said, is to avoid, or instead of saying avoid overspending, maybe I could write that allocate resources, which is the cash in this situation, efficiently. Right? It's got nice businessy words. It sort of is a statement that you can follow up with many other justifications. So if this is what my knowledge is, then I must prove it over the next 2 lines. That, okay, this is what I'm going to say, and I'm going to show you how CCL uses this and how it's going to have a change or impact in the way they are running their business. Yeah, you have better controls over cost, absolutely. So what I will say here is that since the Boston matrix, it shows you which are your let's say struggling or not struggling, right? I should write which are your money making, which are your money making products. And how do we know which one is a money making product? We know that it is a cash cow. And in the case study, this is, for example, product A. And let me just quickly show it to you again that this was product A. It was a cash cow and it was 29% of your revenue. So use wherever you have numbers that you can throw into your answers, do not hesitate. Numbers are a very good way to show application in your answers. So since product A is 29% of revenue, budgets will determine how much spending needs to be allocated. And why are we doing that? To maintain product A as cash cow. Right? Remember, that's what we want. We want cash cows to remain cash cows. We want them to keep making money for us. And since we know that this is a product that's doing well for us, then if we knew our budget, we'll be able to know how much we can spend on product A to keep it a cash cow. Okay. First application again. Yeah. So what I'm doing is that I'm look the knowledge I'm trying to explain here is that allocate resources. Now, first I need to know where resources are required. And when I look at the case study, there are two places where I could have taken no application from. One is the Boston matrix. The other is this whole operational process where they told us how coffee is made. So I could have also said that, look, they know how much, for example, how many jars they will need for coffee powder. And if CCL had a clearly defined operations budget, then they would know how many jars to buy, and that way they won't overspend. Or how I have used it. Look, there's also a marketing side to things, and here I know there's a cash cow, and all marketing departments want to maintain cash cows as they are. So the right budget would mean I'll know how much I need to spend to keep it as a cash cow. So again, this is up to you which part of the case study you want to use as application. I chose to use this because it had numbers as well, and that always makes your answer that much better. Right? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Or you could have said, look, it also helps you to decide which product to close down because you have two question marks. And if we knew the kind of budget we had, we would know that whether you want to continue with both or maybe close down product C, which is only 15% of your future revenue, as opposed to product B, which is 30% of your future revenue. So I could have gone any one of these ways: cash cow, question mark, operations process. That bit you can choose on your own. Okay. So yeah, that would be a nice, healthy looking B part two. It's very very important to make sure that you have a nice mix of application and B part two, and following on in 8 marker and again so 12 marker. Okay, everybody okay with this part? May I move on to the last question? Seems like we're in agreement. All right. So let me just remind you of what the next question will require from the case study. And that's this part, that there's a Boston matrix here. We know there's two cash cow products. We know there's two question marks. We know that revenue is forecast to increase by 10%. And we also know that the owners are concerned. So they need to decide what to do with the Boston matrix that they have. And the question sort of starts from here, really. The question is this: analyze one advantage and one disadvantage to CCL of using Boston matrix analysis. So when it comes to an 8 marker, what I always recommend is divide your question into knowledge, application, analysis, right? Underline the words. Which word is telling you this is the knowledge I need to focus on? Which words are telling you application? What's telling you analysis? The knowledge is, which is one word or a term that you can define in a single line business definition. Application will be a particular situation given about the business in the case study. The analysis is either positive or negative impacts on the business. And when I start breaking this down in terms of its knowledge, can you guys help me do this? What do you think they are testing you on? What knowledge is being tested here? Which concept? Easy to pick, I hope. Yeah, that's right. So as long as I talk about Boston Matrix, I'll be rewarded my marks for knowledge, right? Or very good, Hamza, you go one step back and you talk about product portfolio. So this Boston Matrix is actually a discussion of product portfolio analysis. So you can also explain that and then talk about that. Well, Boston Matrix is just one of the methods. The other one was, remember, product life cycle, and we were using that. Anyways, so that's knowledge. Application is what happens when CCL uses their break-even analysis. And we saw that this part is given in table 2.1. So any information that I can use from that table means that I'm looking at the right part of the case study for its application. And then the easy bit analysis is always, and here they tell you which 2 points they want you to talk about. One, an advantage and a disadvantage. So this is what you need to talk about in this answer. So in terms of its advantage, any idea what's the advantage? Right? You can take decisions. I suppose I will talk about that you can decide which product to close down and which one to back up, right? In terms of its disadvantage, one of them is that it only uses two factors, right? Market share and market growth. And the argument always is that it is too simplistic. There are other factors that can impact the level of competition, the economic situation, political situation, availability of resources. There's so many, the quality of your product. There's so many things that the future of your product depends on, that simply determining your future based on market share and market growth, it seems too simplistic. So that's one thing that I can talk about. Yeah, absolutely. You guys have the advantages correctly figured out, but the disadvantage, I think, maybe we don't focus enough on. But remember, It is too simplistic, and that's its problem. It tells you what each product is, but doesn't tell you, okay, fine, it's a cash cow. Now tell me what to do to make sure it's a cash cow. It doesn't tell you that. So in that sense, it is not detailed enough for you to completely rely on it by itself. That's the argument that I'm going to make. Okay, Varan, very good. Also, that it's difficult to identify. I mean, you may know your own share, but how will you know market share of other companies? It's very expensive to buy that sort of information, and you may not have the research ability to know that sort of information, and you may be simply going on, guesses and estimates, and that's another limitation of using Boston Matrix. Okay, so when you're writing this answer, remember it's an 8 marker. There's still 2 marks for knowledge. So I would recommend that you start off with a nice definition. And remember, this definition only gets you part of the knowledge mark, not the entire knowledge mark. There's a big misconception that definition is enough for the 2 marks of knowledge. It is not. So here, again, just explain that first, there's a process called product portfolio analysis, right, where you look at all the products, and one of them is your Boston matrix, right? And again, within the first paragraph, always bring in an element of application straight away. And what I'm going to do here is that simply mention, and this is where I'm attempting the application, that CCL has identified 2 cash cows and 2 question marks in their portfolio. So notice how I'm really mincing up the knowledge and application together within the first paragraph. This is very important. You don't need to beat about the bush. Go straight for the kill and tell the examiner, look, I know what the Boston matrix is. I know how CCL is using the Boston matrix and what information they have. And then you go into your next paragraph by first talking about what's the advantage, and then its application and analysis, and then you change paragraphs and go into the disadvantage in the same sequence. Okay, so you could choose to be in the same paragraph, you can choose to change paragraph, that's entirely up to you. I'm just going to write it here in terms of what the right sequence should be. So one advantage is that you can make decisions about future product offerings. Okay, and don't need to talk about all 4 products. Just talk about maybe one would be okay, but I would talk about 2, one of each, so that you really make sure that there is no liberty being taken with the application, and you make sure you lock that mark in. And that will start by first explaining that again, their product A is a cash cow. And we know that because its market growth and market share tell us a story. And that story is that when you're a cash cow, your market growth is low, but your market share is still high. Explain this, right? This will lock in the other marks of knowledge. The examiner needs to know, okay, you know what a cash cow is. How do you know? And this is how you convince them that I know what market share and market growth they have individually. And you can also then talk about the other products. So let's say product B. Uh, which one was niche? Was C, sorry. Product C, which is a question mark. And we know that because its market growth and its market share are the exact opposite. Its market growth is high. I mean, you're seeing some potential, some movement, but you still don't have enough of a market share to be certain about this product. So, still iffy. You don't know if you should spend money on it or you shouldn't. And remember, not all products get out of their question mark stage or their growth stage, introductions phase, as we remember from product lifecycle. Remember, most products will fall or will fail, and eventually some will rise and make it to stars. Yeah, this is an 8 marker. This is an 8 mark question. Okay, so this is what I've explained, how I know this, and then how the advantage of how CCL is using this, and what they can make, the decisions they can make. That's what the advantage here would be. And I'm going to explain that then CCL can decide to back product A, since it is, I think, 29% of your revenue. And by doing this, you can improve your cash flow, and also you can see more sales, while at the same time CCL can uh, close down product C. Why? Because it is only forecast to be 15% of your futures. And with this, you can have, and a final statement that I want to bring in here, that all of this will lead to better allocation of the marketing budget. That's why you use Boston matrix. This would be its advantage. So everybody okay with this? Okay, seems like we are. Right. Okay, so, and at this point, then I would change paragraphs. So this is how I like to show it. And then, give me a second. Bring this here so I don't have to write it again. Use technology to my advantage. So again, sorry, let me just emphasize that this point from here to here was the advantage. And now I'm going to talk about the disadvantage. Remember, they've clearly asked you to talk about one advantage, one disadvantage. Hamza, in terms of analysis, all I'm talking about is the decision. Remember, in your analysis, you have to prove what you said in knowledge. So I said I can make decisions. What do you make decisions? What kind of decisions? Well, which one to close down and which ones to back up? How do you know that? Because I saw this Boston matrix in the case study. This is simply the decisions that you're making. And the ability to make decisions is the advantage that I'm trying to explain here. Right. So now, term for a disadvantage, you could write that it is too simplistic because it only uses two factors. Okay. Or somebody else said something earlier as well, that it's difficult to gain the right information. It's difficult to find out the right market share. So maybe I could use that. Difficult to get information. Okay. And once again, use the table, right? Pick a product which you haven't talked about yet. So I could probably talk about product, let's say D. What was product D? Let's take a look. So this was product D, right? A non-branded product sold to wholesalers. It is a cash cow, and it is expected to be 26% of your future revenue. So product D, which is again a cash cow, explain how you know that through the market share and market growth matrix. And this is only, this is although expected to be, was it 29%? to 26%. So it is expected to be 26% of your revenue. So this way you highlight to the examiner, look, this is the application point that I'm going to talk about. And then the disadvantage is that Boston Matrix only uses market share and market growth and market share. Other factors can also impact the Boston Matrix. For example, and mention one or two, the easiest one would be competition or economic conditions. Right? And this may lead to misinformed or ill-informed decisions being made. Right? Or you could say that market share and market growth, 26% revenue, and my analysis could be, well, this information cannot be verified because you may have gotten it from the internet and it could be done through secondary research. And that means that if you make a decision and it's not correct because your research was wrong, you can't go back on it. So that could be the other way to write the analysis here. That's how I would answer this 8 marker. Questions, please. No, that's fine, right? So they can both coexist. The advantages and disadvantages coexist, right? So just because niche market has fewer competitors, sorry, fewer customers, does it mean you don't go for niche market? You still do, right? Because it also means there's less competition. So you have to present both sides of the argument. That's what the examiner wants you to talk about, that you can't just simply back something up because it's good. You also have to talk about what's bad about it. So for like I said, for each mark, think of it in terms of 1.5 times. So one marker, 2 minutes, 3 markers, 5 minutes, 8 marker, roughly 14 to 15 minutes, 12 marker, roughly 24 to 26 minutes. That's how you need to look at it. Yeah. Okay, you have 60, 30, 60 marks, and you will have what, 90 minutes. So 1.5 minute per mark. That's how you need to calculate it. Yeah, you have to use the case study situations for application. That's very important. Look, whichever one, all are equally fine. The reason why you run 2 or 3 advantages or disadvantages is because they're equally good. You use the one for which you can find the most amount of information in the case study. So whichever one you can justify by using the information. Remember, application is the main testing point in this paper. That's what they want to know. So use that advantage for which you have enough application. That's the way to think about it. Yeah, I will be providing this entire sheet, the answer guide, this whole thing, so you can attempt this on your own. Absolutely. I'll be sharing it everywhere. But like I said, for every mark, you have 1.5 minutes. Simply multiply the number of marks with 1.5. That's the amount of time you have per question. Okay. Look, if really, there's 2 types of students. Some find case studies very easy, and I'm one of those, because the information's all in front of you. All you need to do is use your brain and fix it all together. And basically, what the way I approach a paper two is like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces are there. You just need to use your brain to put it together, and you have a good answer. Just make sure that you have the right understanding of knowledge, application, analysis in each question. That's it. Okay, guys, so that's it from me. Hopefully, this was a fruitful session. I liked it. I was able to touch upon the new topics and do some good questions here as well. So I'll be sharing this and the recordings on all the channels and wherever you guys are in touch with me. Thank you for being here. Next class is on Wednesday, same time. It'll be a paper one session. Okay. All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz. I will share the new topics as well. Don't worry. Allah.